Good evening, Purple family. Welcome to another episode of Shades of Purple, a Prince podcast. On tonight's episode, we're going to be doing a third entry in the Purple Kingdom series. So my Purple Kingdom series talks about men and women that worked for Prince, were in his band, or women that he dated. So the first episode that I did was about Andre Simone, who was, of course, Prince's childhood friend and his very first bassist. The second episode was about Jill Jones, who was a backup vocalist for Prince and also dated him as well. So this third episode is going to be about Dez Dickerson, who was his very first guitarist. So let's get right into it. So Dez Dickerson was born Desmond DeAndre Dickerson on August 7th, 1955, which makes him a Leo for those of you who keep up with zodiac signs. He was born in Minneapolis, Minnesota. So he was, from the same town that Prince was from. So he was familiar with Prince enough to know that when he spied a advertisement about an audition in the Twin City Reader, he knew that it had to be Prince. So he decided to try his luck, and he went down to the Dell's Tire Mart for the audition. So it was only about a 15-minute audition, and he actually got to be the first person to go to the audition because there were a line, obviously, of people lined up. But this wasn't the first audition of guitarists that Prince had. He had a previous time for auditions, and I guess he wasn't impressed with any of those guitarists, as Dez would later tell him. And but he was impressed with Dez because Dez did something really uniquely different than all the other people who had auditioned. Now, usually, and I guess this is what anybody will want to do as a guitarist, is if you're auditioning for a band, when it's your time to do a solo, of course you're gonna go all out and try to show your skill. But Dez decided to do something different. He decided to just stay within the groove of the song. And Prince kind of appreciated that because, like I said, previous auditioners had just really went over the top with their guitar solos, and that really didn't impress Prince. He wanted someone that understood that sometimes you just need to stay in your lane. And you can have a guitar solo, but you don't have to go all out. And so he appreciated that about Dez's playing. And so Dez said in his book that Prince kind of talked to him for a little while and just asked him some questions, asked him, hey, do you believe in God? Which for Prince, even at this time, was very important, that the people that he surrounded himself with were believers in God. So he asked him that. He asked him, where did he see himself in the next, few years? What were his goals and, things that he wanted to do with his life? And I guess Prince was, impressed with his answers enough to hire him on the spot. And so that's how Dez became Prince's guitarist. And he was with Prince from about 1979 till about 1983, right before Purple Rain. So in his book, My Time with Prince, Confessions of a Former Revolutionary, he talks about his time. And I hope to review this book, but it was kind of hard to get my hands on because it is like it's 20 years old now. He did it back in 2003, so way before Prince left us. And I don't know about how Prince felt about the book at the time, but I guess Dez just kind of felt like it was just time. And so he did the book, and it's not a very long book. It kind of reminds me of the book that Brown Mark did a few years ago, which actually I kind of lifted my title for this series from Brown Mark's book, because Brown Mark's book is called My Time in the Purple Kingdom. So I kind of stole that a little bit from Brown Mark, but anyway, he'll be all right. So moving on. So after the audition, he became Prince's guitarist, and he became most well known probably for his guitar solo that he did for Little Red Corvette, which was, the top 10 hit that came out of the 1999 album. Now, Prince wrote the guitar solo, but Dez was the one who played it. And a lot of people don't realize that, but yeah, Dez was the one who played it. Prince wrote it, Dez performed it, and he did an awesome job. And I must say that Dez's guitar skills, I think, are kind of underrated. Next to Prince, I think anybody's would be underrated, but underrated in a way that I don't think they should be, because both him and Jesse Johnson, I think, were really, really great guitarists. And to be honest, I really do think they gave Prince a run for his money. They were that good. And I think Prince also knew that as well. And he didn't mind giving guitar solos to Dez. And Dez said as much in his book that Prince at one point told him, hey, I'm going to let you do all the guitar solos and I'm going to be more on vocals. And so that's kind of how everything kind of panned out at some point. But going back, so in 1980, when he was off the road for a Christmas break, Dickerson had a profound conversion and he became a born-again Christian. And afterwards, performing songs with sexual themes like the songs that were on Dirty Mind, like Head and Sister, and just all those really nasty sexual songs, he started to have a problem with. And this was early on in 1980. And even though Dickerson and Prince's popularity was growing, he desired more and more to quit the band. So as early as like 1980, 1981, he was thinking about leaving because, he had, made this big conversion and he didn't want to, he just disagreed with a lot of Prince's lyrics. And that's the same reason why Gail Chapman, the first keyboardist, left, because she was actually a part of this group called The Way, which was like this, like ultra, I won't say ultra, but it was like a Christian set. And, and some of those lyrics were also very bothering for her. And so same thing with Dez. He was just like, I just wasn't feeling this, and even though, the band was getting, more popular, but he just was like, I don't know about this. But he continued on for as long as he could, and he contributed songs for Prince's side projects. So he wrote a lot for The Time and The Time's first album. He wrote He's So Dull for Vanity 6, and he co-wrote Wild and Loose and After High School and Cool for The Time. So he wrote Cool, which is probably outside of Jungle Love and of The Bird, Cool is probably one of the most well-known Time songs. He actually wrote that song. And he also contributed vocals to Little Red Corvette in 1999. And of course, like I said, I told you he did the guitar solo for Little Red Corvette. And that ranked number 64 on Guitar World's list of 100 greatest guitar solos. So that just shows you right there that, Dickerson had the skill and Prince trusted him. Excuse me. Okay, so following the 1999 tour was when Dickerson left the band to pursue other options, and he was replaced on guitar by Wendy Melvoin. After leaving the Revolution, which is what I'm reading this off of Wikipedia, but technically, you could say by the 1999, which he was still in the band. So yeah, you could say, because I was going to say that Dez wasn't really a part of the Revolution, but actually you could say that he was, because by 1999, Prince was referring to the band as the Revolution. So yeah, you could say that he was a part of what would be called the Rebel band, and then he was also part of the Revolution. So after leaving the Revolution, Dickerson formed his own short-lived band, the Modernaires, and he toured in support of Billy Idol on his 1984 Rebel Yell tour. So the Modernaires, which was Dez Dickerson's band, was in the Purple Rain movie. Sorry, y'all, I'm trying not to cough. It was in the Purple Rain movie. And y'all remember Dez, he's singing a song, Want to Be a Mountaineer. Then I don't know the words. But anyway, so that was his band. And he also did that. He went on tour with Billy Idol. But their song was not released as a single on the Purple Rain soundtrack, which, I mean, and I coughed anyway. But so were none of the Time songs were also not singles on the Purple Rain soundtrack. So, he kind of jilted Dez Dickerson. Prince did a little bit too. So anyway, a solo recording deal failed to materialize, and in 1987, Dickerson relocated to Nashville to back singer Judson Spence. He also kept busy with session work and producing other artists. So he also became a producer. Excuse me. He also became a producer in his own right, in the same way that Andre Simone would. And in 1990, Dickerson was named vice president of A&R with the CCM, Contemporary Christian Music label, Star Song Communications. 4 years later, he founded his own label, Absolute Records, a Christian rock record company. Artists on his label included Squirt, These Five Down, and Metropolis, aka Metropolis America. He released a solo album in the late 1990s entitled One Man, and then of course his book about his time with Prince. And so, let me see, what else has he done? In 2005, it says Dickerson released a double CD retrospective collection of his work from 1982 to 1987, including the completed version of the classic Modernaire, taken from the film Purple Rain. Okay, so he kind of redid that in 2005, featuring Prince on guitar, keyboards, and background vocals. This track was released on vinyl in 2008 by the UK label Signited. Okay. Also in 2005, a 3D CD set was released, Rock of Ages, where classic hymns meet classic rock. This was produced, arranged, recorded, and mixed by Dickerson and features powerful guitar riffs. It presented 32 well-known hymns in rock format, and Dickerson playing many of the instruments. I wonder where he got that from. Joining Dickerson on this project was his son, Jordan Dickerson, who contributed drums to many of the tracks and bass guitar on some. Jordan also arranged Angus Dye. Currently, Dickerson manages record labels and branding companies Pavilion Entertainment and Pavilion Synergies in Nashville. In 2012, he joined his former bandmates at a full-scale Revolution reunion, which was set up by drummer Robert Bobby Z. Rifkin to raise money and awareness for heart disease. Prince attended the performances but did not participate. Starting in 2023, Dez periodically starting filming in different hosts as a radio host. I'm trying to read this. Radio host for Super Talk 99.7 WTN. So he does radio hosting right now. So that's great. So the only albums he had was the One Man in 1999, Rock of Ages, and a retrospective. So, and the single Modernaire. So he's kind of made a little name for himself. Now, he didn't do as much producing and writing as Andre Simone did after he left the band, Prince's band. But he did make a name for himself. And like I said, a lot of people forget about Dez because, like I said, he was one of those early players in Prince's career. But he did help, I think, Prince in a lot of ways. And he talks about that in the book, that, after the whole fiasco with opening up for the Rolling Stones, it was Dez Dickerson that kind of convinced him to return for the second night. Because after the first night went bad, Prince was like, I'm done. I'm not going back. Like, he literally got, a flight out the same day, and he went back to Minneapolis. He was done. He was not going back to Los Angeles Coliseum to do nothing for nobody. But Dez was like, hey, he called him up and told Prince, hey, we've got to show them that we're not scared of them. We just have to have more rock. We just got to. And the second performance went way better than the first one. And I do talk about that in another episode of the podcast, an earlier episode. So I can't remember which episode it is. but yeah, you can find it. If I really think about it hard enough, I could probably tell you. But I think it was when I was talking about the Dirty Mind, when I did my review for the Dirty Mind album. So check that out. It's like in the very first season of the podcast. I think it's called Prince's Dirty Mind. Yeah, that's what it's called. So check out that episode where I talk about the Rolling Stones opening fiasco. But anyway, so Dez was one of the people that kind of convinced Prince to return. And so that took a lot. That took a lot of guts because, Dez was just, he was just a guitarist, in Prince's band. But he had to convince his boss, like, look, we can't be, driven out like this. We've got to do what we got to do. And Dez at the time said that he had his reservations about opening up for the Rolling Stones because they were such a different type of crowd than what they were used to. Now, even at this time, this was really before Prince kind of crossed over into the mainstream. His audiences were mostly still black. He did have some sprinkle of white people here and there, but the Rolling Stones was going to be the audience that was going to be like 90% white. And Dez said at the time in his book, and I do remember him talking about this, where he had his reservations about that. He was just like, look, this is our first crossover audience. And he was just like, I don't know if we're ready for this. And I think he may have even expressed that to Prince. But at Prince at the time, he was just giddy with excitement. He's just like, no, this is going to be great. Because Prince really saw this as a keystone moment for him. As this is going to be like, okay, this is going to be my crossover moment. So this has to be done. Not knowing that, Purple Rain in just a few years would be the vehicle that would take him over to the other side. But, Prince was hungry. This was at a time where he really was wanting to make a name for himself. And that's why he tried to, stand up Rick James on his own tour during this time. He was just hungry for that success. And he was willing to do just about anything to really put his name out there. And so Dez understood that. And he knew that, he had to play his role as his guitarist, but also as Prince's friend. He wanted to tell him, and, he was a few years older than Prince too. So he kind of probably felt like, he needed to be Prince's big brother in a way, even though Prince had brothers. But he was just like, I was just wanting to be a friend and a brother to him and let him know hey, this may not turn out how you want it. But, Prince did it anyway. And so after it didn't go the way Prince thought, Dez was one of those people that was just there for him to tell him look, we can do this. Don't worry about it. It is what it is. And so, I think that Dez probably got to him. And it wasn't just Dez that talked to him. Mick Jagger called. There was some other people too that called to try to get Prince to come back out. And like I said, the second performance wasn't nearly as bad. They were able to finish their set because the first night they were not able to finish their set at all. But the second time, they did have the booing and all that, but they were still able to finish their set and get off the stage as a group. So there's that. So I think that's it on Dez Dickerson. Like I said, I'm going to review his book in the future when I can get my hands back on it, because he did talk about, I remember, now I'm trying to think about some of the other things that I remember from the book. He talked about having a resentment against Vanity, and Vanity is going to be the next person I talk about in this series. He said that he resented Vanity because Vanity came in and just kind of just in his mind and Dez's mind just kind of just took over. He thought that, for example, when Prince and Vanity did the Rolling Stone cover, Dez took offense to that. He really thought that the band, which helped Prince become the superstar, should have been in the photo instead of Vanity. And so he really took offense to that. He didn't like how Vanity just seemed to come in and just, kind of dictate, what she was or wasn't going to do, or how Prince should be doing this with the band. And so he said for a long time, and he said that they made up before her death, but he said for a long time that he kind of resented Vanity because he felt like, she was doing things or saying things that was really not in her place to say. And so he said that he, didn't like that. In addition to, of course, the spicy lyrics that Prince had in a lot of his songs at this time, that he was just starting to it just wasn't meshing well with his soul and his Christian walk. And I can respect that. I just, like I said, with Gail Chapman, she felt the exact same way, that it's just the lyrics were just not, meshing with their Christian lifestyles. And I don't know if Prince ever, regretted that. At the time, he was young, and like I said, he was hungry for success, and he wanted to do things that were kind of shocking and stand out and whatnot. So I don't know if he looked back on that with regret. I don't think he did, because of course later on, when he would become a Jehovah's Witness, he would stop swearing in his lyrics, and he wouldn't use, as much sexual, lyrics and innuendo as he did in his earlier records. So I think that it took Prince himself to kind of be more religious, to kind of understand where, those early band members were coming from and their beliefs. But I also think that even at that time, Prince really respected their beliefs. And that's why he was okay when Dez decided to leave him, because he's like, hey, you got to do what's best for you. Same thing with Gail. I'm sure he regretted them leaving in a way because they were such good musicians. But at the same time, he respected, their feelings. And after, because Dez, toward the end of his tenure with Prince, he just stopped coming to rehearsals. And he also didn't kind of appreciate the fact that the rehearsals were all day long. And then they would rehearse all this material, and then they would do the show, and then Prince would change the whole set. And so he was just like, what is the point of us rehearsing for 10 hours if he's just going to turn around and change the whole set, So he was kind of frustrated with Prince with a number of things, but I think that was one of the major things, and that's what made him just stop wanting to, do rehearsals. And so when he wouldn't come to rehearsal, that's when Wendy Melvoin would come up and would stand in as the guitarist. And so that would made her kind of be noticed, and eventually would led Prince hiring her as Dez's replacement. But I do think that Dez and Prince did remain friends for a few years at least after Dez left the group. And Dez also mentions, because he talks about his own life, of course, in the book. His book and Brown Mark's book are very similar in how they're set up, because Dez talks about his life, his early life, before he even met Prince and all that. And but after he got in the band, he got married, and Prince actually was the only person in the band that was actually able to make Dez's wedding, because everybody else that was in the band got stuck in Europe, because they went over to I think it was France. The very first overseas performance that Prince did was around the time of Dez's wedding to his first wife. And so they got kind of stuck up in Paris. And so Prince, he went back with Dez. But the crazy part is they got caught in customs, and they actually strip searched Prince. Dez talked about this. And I think the reason why that they end up strip searching Prince and kind of holding up Dez is because Dez seemed to think it was because of how they looked. Because, of course, they had this crazy, Prince was in his drawers back then and his leg warmers. He would just go around, dressed like that. And so, of course, the custom agents were like, okay, what's going on? What is going on with these two? And, and of course, Dez with his now famous headband that looked like the Japanese flag. He would have that on, and, just kind of wild. He would have, a shirt, an open shirt, or just have one of those little jackets, and his, chest would be all out, so it was just kind of just like weird, so he, at the time, so he was like, I kind of understand, but it almost made him late for his own wedding. And so, but everything turned out all right. Then he also talked about the infamous time that Prince got arrested. Well, actually, it wasn't just Prince. It was actually Matt Fink as well. So this is what happened. So, because you see that photo of Prince holding up like a little sign of him getting arrested. Okay, that is photoshopped. There's actually no images that we know of Prince, getting arrested and having his photo taken. That is photoshopped. As far as I know, it is photoshopped. But Dez did talk about in his book, okay, so they're on an airplane, and Prince sees this bullhorn that I guess one of the people on the plane had, like a stewardess. That's what I was thinking. Stewardess. I don't know what they're called now. Like airplane attendants, I guess is what they're called now. But back then they were called stewardess. And so she had a bullhorn. And so Prince tells Matt to just take the Mark to take the bullhorn. Because she like sat it down in like an unoccupied seat. And so, because I guess he just wanted it, for a show or whatever. They were just going to basically just try to steal it. And so Mark ended up putting it under his seat. And so the stewardess saw him do this. And so she confronted him and said, did you just try to steal the bullhorn? And they kind of had a discussion back and forth. And so finally, when the plane landed, the stewardess let the pilot know, and then they were going to arrest Mark. And so Prince, being the stand-up guy that he was like, no, I'm going to go with you. And so Prince got arrested as well. And so that's why they were arrested, because of so-called stealing a bullhorn. So he talks about, eventually Mark and Prince were released, and they were able to catch a flight back to the next show, which I'm not sure. I think this was in Mississippi, and I think they had a show in Memphis or somewhere in Nashville or something like that. And so they were able to catch a flight to the next show in time to make it to the next show. So he tells stories like that in his book. And so I'm going to have to go back and read his book because it was a good book. And I learned stories like that and other little tidbits about Prince and his personality in his book. So once again, it's called My Time with Prince. So please, if you get a chance, check it out. The whole thing is called My Time with Prince, Confessions of a Former Revolutionary. So talking about, him being in the revolution. And like I said, I guess, I never really considered him to be a part of the revolution. I don't know, maybe that's just me, but now it does make sense because, of course, he was with the group all the way up until 1999, and that's kind of when the revolution was born during the 1999 tour. So, yeah, he was in the revolution. So, I know, I'm just rambling now at this point, but that's Dez Dickerson. That's, like I said, not a whole lot is known about him. He's one of those people that it's just kind of like, I knew this episode was probably not going to be as long as my Jill Jones and Andre Simone episode, but, it's probably going to be like that for several other people as well. Up next on the Purple Kingdom, I'm going to be talking about the infamous Vanity. So that episode might be a little bit longer. That might be close to an hour. So I might even have to do a script for that one. So we'll just see. But anyway, you guys, so thank you so much for listening to tonight's episode. And until I hear from you guys again, peace and be wild, and may you live to see the dawn. Bye.